remember that day. For some, the pain will never fade.
Hey, Gotham Geek Girl here, and it's time for another review. This time we're going to talk season 2 of Invincible. When I tell you this season is incredible, believe me. Super excited that it's back. Here's a non-spoiler of part 1, which includes episodes 1 through 4. So the acclaimed adult animated superhero series Invincible from Skybound Entertainment picks up right after that shocking season 1 finale. So it's back, and it's bloodier than ever. It's based on the groundbreaking comic book series by Robert Kirkman, Cory Walker, and Ryan Ottley, and the story revolves around 18-year-old Mark Grayson, who's just like every other guy his age, except his father, or was, the most powerful superhero on the planet. So he's still reeling from Nolan's betrayal in season 1. Mark struggles to rebuild his life as he faces a host of new threats, all while battling his greatest fear, that he might become his father without knowing it. So that's going to be one of the main premises of this season. I'm going to avoid spoilers, but I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about what happens with the aftermath of Omni-Man. So at San Diego Comic-Con, we actually got to get a clip of it. We saw a second teaser and some snippets with scenes from the long-anticipated second season. And it's a incredibly packed cast. They introduced the voice cast. We got a slew of new characters and villains. First half of the second season will consist of 4 episodes, premiering weekly, starting Friday, November 3rd on Prime Video. So Invincible already had an incredible roster of voice talent for the first season, but season 2 takes it to an entirely new level. So returning cast members are, of course, Mark Grayson, Stephen Yeun, Sandra Oh, who's incredible as his mom, Debbie, Zazie Beetz, Great Elise, Chris Diamantopoulos, Walton Goggins, Gillian Jacobs, Jason Montezukis, Ross Marquand, Carrie Payton, Zachary Quino. The list goes on and on. There's even Seth Rogen, of course, and J.K. Simmons. This season, they're going to be joined by Sterling K. Brown, Peter Cullen, Rob Delaney, Callista Flockhart, Phil Lamar, Luke McFarlane, Tatiana Maslany, Scott McNary, Jay Farrow, Ella Purnell, Tim Robinson, Ben Schwartz, Rhea Seehorn, and so many more. So Invincible season 1, it ended off kind of crazy with a little bit of a bloody, gruesome scene with Omni-Man where he reveals who he really is. And this kind of takes a crazy toll on Deb and Mark as they're left devastated as basically left them and just destroyed all of Chicago and basically killed human beings and called his mom a pet. So that was pretty tragic. And this season, we're going to kind of explore that a little bit of their trauma dealing with that. Like, she just found out her husband of 20 years, anything real. So that's kind of one of the major themes this season. And also Mark battling with, is he going to become like his father? He's trying to really prove himself that he's not. So the second season starts right after the events, and Mark, it's kind of like without giving anything away, this was actually revealed in the trailer. So Mark has a vision where he's basically like his father, and he's fighting a mortal. So he's kind of fighting in the city, and he has some of the ideologies that his father has. So that's going to be explored later in the season. I'm not going to get into that too much, but basically it's life after Omni-Man, the devastation he left in Chicago. Mark's mom is grieving while Mark is busy getting ready for college along with his best friend and his girlfriend, Amber. There's going to be a slew of new characters and villains. Debbie gets a surprise visit from an old friend, and basically this is kind of she's really important this season. She kind of plays a major role this season. We're seeing a lot more of her as she's battling alone and kind of trying to, I guess, talk about like her feelings with what she's going through, because what happened to her was so tragic. So we're going to see a lot of Deb this season. And I just want to say Sandra Oh gave a phenomenal performance. She really, really stood out this season. We're going to see more of the Mullers, lots of cool characters and amazing fight scenes. We're going to see, the Guardians of the Crew are going to be having their own kind of problems. Cecile kind of thinks they need a new boss, and he sees them as like a failure of leadership and they're not getting things right. So he institutes some new changes, and now he adds Immortal. Immortal's in charge. He also adds Bulletproof. And at the same time, Mark wants to prove himself to Cecile that he's not his father. So he keeps asking to come back. So Prime Video's official synopsis, season 2 will present Mark struggling to rebuild his life as he faces a host of new threats, all while battling his greatest fear, that he might become his father without even knowing it. Kirkman also commented that season 2 is going to explore concept of a multiverse, and that it'll be used to like explore characters that we already know through different lenses. And this plot line is going to introduce a new villain, Angstrom Levy, played by Sterling K. Brown. So he's Invincible's new arch nemesis, and he's a dimension hopper. Mark and Amber are busy looking into colleges, and Mark's, still a teenager, on the verge of like becoming an adult, starting his new life, but he's also feeling like an obligation to his he also feels like he has an obligation to fulfilling his duties as a superhero with everything that he's been kind of going through and given left with to deal with. He kind of feels like it's his responsibility and solely like he has to prove himself. So that he's going to be doing that throughout the season, kind of really showing like his abilities and who he is and not giving up. So the first episode gets pretty dark. I'm not going to get into any spoilers, but this season is really emotional. There's a lot of emotional baggage. It's really dark and intense, and not just in terms of like the brutality, but in terms of like their internal struggles, like what Mark is going through, and like I mentioned, what Deb is going through after everything that they went through. So there's a lot of trauma and like a lot of sadness and emotional moments this season. Of course, we also have the Guardians crew. We have Rex coming back, Black Samson. We're going to see Adam Eve return. She's going to be a bit in this episode, and she's kind of going through her own internal struggles as well, as she's dealing with the fact that her parents, this was in season 1, that her parents despise the fact that she's a superhero. So she's also going through that like internal struggle of trying to prove herself, like I can do good, I can be a superhero. So the Guardians are basically clashing with each other as Cecile's kind of instilling these new rules and new forms of like leadership. So he's clashing with Immortal, but we're going to see a lot more of the Guardians this season in terms of like Monster Girl, Duplicate. We're going to see a little bit more of their personal life and also how they're trying to keep the Guardians going forward. So at San Diego Comic-Con, we got to see a pretty cool clip. Back over the summer, they showed a clip of Midnight City, which is kind of like a Gotham Darkwing. We've seen Darkwing before, but his apprentice, Nightboy, he hates being called a sidekick, but he takes over as Darkwing. So that was a pretty cool scene. So we're going to see a lot more, I guess, like different universes and like different places without like giving away too much. Mark is really desperate to fix the mistakes of his father. Mark is going to get his ass beat this season. He gets beat a few times, but he's also a lot more confident and he's a lot stronger. Cecile's keeping a lot of secrets from the family, but Deb doesn't want Mark to return into this world. But Mark, like I said, he's like desperate to really fix the mistakes of his father. So we're going to see some other returning characters like Seth Rogen. He's going to return as Alan the Alien. Alan's awesome. He's going to be a pretty big part of a couple of episodes. He's definitely a fun addition to the show. He's supposed to be kind of unstoppable, but he knows he's not. And he's basically on a hunt to like find Mark because Mark's the only one who can help him. And they're going to go into that a bit. We're also going to see a lot of Viltrumites, Viltrumite versus Viltrumite. We're going to see Shapesmith. He seems like a pretty oddball character. He's probably hiding something as well. Definitely. So Alan the Alien and these other characters, going to be a lot of like funny narration. It's pretty shocking. It does not hold back the violence. We're going to see some new characters. We're going to see a new city, Thraxa. We're going to see Mark also battling with college and keeping his relationship with Amber. And I actually really like Amber a lot more this season. She seems to be written a little better and a little more like comfortable with her relationship with Mark now that she knows he's a superhero. So I kind of like their dynamic a little bit more this season because she's kind of like, I trust you, do your thing. And she says it's okay, never apologize for saving lives. So I kind of like them a lot more this season.
Save the world, Invincible.
You're way too good for me!
The music is absolutely fire. It's incredible. Like, oh my god, there's so many amazing moments, like whether it's like an amazing fight scene or very, very, very dark, like emotional moment. Like the music is just incredible this season. That really stood out. Like I said, Debbie is unpacking the last 20 years. So she has so much trauma. So there's a lot, like I mentioned, a lot of sad moments. There's also plenty of what the fuck moments. There's gonna be some scenes where you're just gonna like lose your mind. I scream out loud a couple times, probably scared my neighbors, but it was fucking crazy. It's wild. There's so much bone cracking when I tell you, like Mortal Kombat like esque fatalities. So much blood. Oh, man. Bone cracking, bone cracking. You're going to love it. Overall, Invincible Season 2 is a must-watch. Gruesome violence, excellent voice cast, amazing score, brutal fight sequences, and exciting new characters and Invincible lore. Can't wait for part 2. Make sure to check it out. So the first half of the 8-episode season, it's going to premiere on November 3rd, with new episodes airing weekly. Following a mid-season hiatus, the second half of Season 2 is going to premiere in early 2024, so we're going to have to wait for those. The first season receives a certified fresh ranking on Rotten Tomatoes. Season 2 coming right along. Invincible will be available exclusively on Prime Video.
Arrogant, just like your father.
People of Earth, the more you resist, the worse this gets. And if you think you can stop us, don't forget, I'm